all to order. This is, we are today beginning the Arts Commission meeting of Monday, October 25th at 6 p.m. And to provide a live remote public comment, join the Zoom video conference meeting. The meeting ID is 871-4775-8162, and passcode is 818386. Roll call.
Oh, there you go, sorry. You're not picking up too good. It's a little more minus the mask.
Okay, I'll speak louder. So roll call, please, Secretary.
Will do, thank you.
Do the-
Commissioner Meredith,
Here.
Commissioner Emanuel,
Here.
Commissioner Cowdery,
Here.
and Chair Klauber.
Here.
Vice Chair Brunner is no longer on the commission, so he is absent tonight.
Thank you. As some attendees may be participating in their first Walnut Creek Arts Commission meeting on their first teleconference meeting, I want to welcome everyone and talk briefly about the public comment process. This portion of the meeting is reserved for comment on items not on the agenda. Under the Brown Act, the Commission cannot act on items raised during public communications, but may respond briefly to statements made or questions posed, request clarification, or refer the item to staff. When I open the public comment period, if you are remote, use the raise hand feature or press *9 if you are connected by audio only, which will alert staff that you have a public comment you would like to provide. In-person public comments will be taken first. Please wait your turn, and once brought into the meeting, state your name and city of residence for the record. Consistent with city policies related to public comments, each speaker will have 2 minutes to make your remarks. The Zoom feed for each speaker will cut off automatically at 2 minutes. Does any member of the public wish to speak on an item not on the agenda?
Thank you, Chair. I'm just giving us a little time. At this time, there are no members of the public wishing to comment on items not on the agenda.
Thank you. Okay. So moving along, next on the agenda is the consent calendar. Does any commissioner have you all read the consent calendar, and do you have any questions or any item on the consent calendar that you'd like to bring up at this point?
I move approval of the consent calendar.
I second that.
Second.
Okay, we have 2 seconds. That's unique, but thank you. That's okay. I'll call the roll. Commissioner Cowdery,
Yes.
Chair Klauber,
Yes.
Commissioner Emanuel,
Yes.
Commissioner Meredith.
Yes.
Motion carries 4-0. I will note that for the record, the minutes from your July meeting, along with the minutes from this meeting, will be shared with you in January. Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Can I just make a quick comment about the Bedford Gallery Annual Report and just thank the staff for all the wonderful work that you guys have been continuing to do through all these difficult, challenging times.
I second that. Yeah. Right.
God, I can't hear anyway, but now it's worse.
So there are, now we move on to considerations, and there's 4A through D. So next on the agenda for the commission consideration is 4A, which is the Arts Commission meeting schedule for 2022. At this time, I invite staff to provide the staff presentation.
This will be your shortest staff presentation of the night. You have in front of you the schedule for 2022. We're just looking for a motion and approval of this calendar for Arts Commission meetings for 2022, your regular meetings.
I'll move approval.
I second that.
Great, thank you. Commissioner Meredith,
Yes.
Chair Klauber,
Yes.
Commissioner Emanuel,
Yes.
and Commissioner Cowdery.
Yes.
Motion carries 4-0. Thank you.
Next item under consideration is 4B, approval of artists for Rodney Plaza Art Project. And so at this time, I ask staff to provide presentation.
Good evening, Commissioners. Stephen Huss, Public Art Manager. Tonight, staff is absolutely delighted to be bringing you an artist recommendation for the Rodney Plaza project. I wanted to say up front that I do believe we'll be joined remotely by the artist, so we may want to just make sure he's on the line, but we'll introduce him in a little while. Arts Commission and staff have been involved in the process of creating a significant work of public art for Rodney Plaza at the Leisure Center ever since planning and design began for the plaza renovation. In October 2019, your commission approved a project and allocated a budget of over $450,000. In December 2019, the commission appointed the panelists, and the panel includes Council Member Luella Haskew, Commission Chair Klauber, Community Member Carol Fowler, Arts Consultant Donna Napper, and artist Victoria Wagner. The panel met twice earlier this year. In June, the panel reviewed a short list of finalists who had submitted concept proposals in response to our invitation. The finalists were culled from a pool of highly in-demand, dynamic, national and international artists that were nominated by staff, the Public Art Committee, and the consulting firm ArtSource. And those artists were Mark Fornes, Blessing Hancock, Donald Lipsky, Nathan Mabry, and Zach Ove. At the June meeting, the panel identified their top 2 candidates and reconvened in September when they interviewed their 2 top choices and recommended at the conclusion of that meeting that Mark Fornes receive the commission to create a work of art for Rodney Plaza. The panel's second choice among the finalists was artist Blessing Hancock, and staff is recommending that you appoint Hancock as the alternate artist in the event Mr. Fornes has to decline the contract for any reason. The project's budget for artwork is $415,000. That includes a public art allocation of $315,000. That total is included in the total balance of the public art fund that I believe we have noted in the report, which is roughly 1.5 million. The remainder of the budget was provided by Diablo Regional Arts Association. We began with about $457,000 budget. We have expended $25,000 on concept proposals and finalist engagement in the process, and approximately $7,000 for the consulting firm ArtSource. We lost about $9,000 in general fund carry forward that we could not carry forward any further. Just to note again, that is public. That was not public art funding. That was money that the staff had aggregated and squeezed from other places to be able to add to the budget. So we are now at a bit over $415,000. That's the amount that we are proposing for the commission contract, and that is the amount we announced to all the finalists before they prepared concept proposals. At this point, could you pull up item 4B, attachment 1? Our selected artist, Mark Fornes, is an artist and architect. His studio, The Very Many, is based in New York City and specializes in large-scale, site-specific structures that often serve as gateways, portals, and shelters to public and private space, while existing as extraordinary and arresting public sculptures. Fornes and his team build organic, thin-shell constructions fabricated of aluminum pieces which push the limits of form, structure, and space. They occupy a realm between architecture and art. So if you could go forward a few pages just to some of the, yeah, thank you, that's it, that's exactly it. And feel free to scroll through every 5 seconds or so to the next one. Each project aims to provide a unique spatial experience for visitors while helping to define the visual identity and social life of its place. Mark Fornes espouses a philosophy of culture making with his work, to lead and create the culture of a place and a city, not simply reflect and respond to existing conditions and identity. Past projects of theirs may be seen across the United States, Canada, and Europe. It is, yes. Here's some of his wonderful stuff. As well as the other artists, Mr. Fornes did submit a concept, which we're going to look at as well. Yeah, it's a little later. Yeah, that's it. So this is this concept. It's important to note, though, you are not approving a concept at this meeting. We received preliminary ideas from the 5 artists which reflected their early thoughts about how their work could impact and interface with the Leisure Center while creating a landmark on Rodney Plaza at the same time that it respected the programmatic and spatial uses. Fornes submitted a very bold suggestion for a sort of pavilion that would claim the central plaza to provide a showcase space and heightened environment for the types of temporary events and performances that might occur on the plaza. Viewing his proposal, I think you have a sense of the scale, originality, and adventurousness that his work will bring to the plaza. At the same time, we note this is not the direction the project will go, given that the central plaza must be kept clear. If, in fact, the Arts Commission approves awarding his contract and it's ratified by council, Fornes and his team will consider all options for an artwork on the plaza, factoring in the realities of restricted space, and will be asked to confer with key stakeholders, including the DRAA board and staff, the plaza architect, and others who can share their vision for the plaza to help inform concept development and engage in the conversation regarding its final disposition and location. The project is expected to be freestanding on the western portion of Rodney Plaza. Staff's intent is to complete the project in time to debut at the October 2022 on Broadway event. And I would just note, by the way, we do have a concept from Blessing Hancock and examples of her past work, which I'd be happy to share with you, but I'd like to be able to give you time to meet Mr. Fornes and speak with him first. So I'm just going to state that our requested action tonight of you is to approve Mark Fornes to receive the commission contract in the amount of $415,000 to create a public art work project for Rodney Plaza, and approve Blessing Hancock as the alternate artist for a fallback situation. The commission's approval will serve as a recommendation to council to consider awarding the contract, which is consistent with the city's purchasing policy due to the amount of the dollar amount. Do we have Mr. Fornes available? He's joining us remotely. Great. So he is available to answer questions you may have about his work or his early thoughts on the project. And there's, great to see you, Mark. I'm gonna turn it over to the commission.
Hi, everyone.
Hello. Hi, Mark.
Pardon me? Just, Mark, I thought maybe you could say a word or two about your work and your interest in this project. I've just kind of given a little introduction. And then I wanted to give the Art Commission the opportunity to ask you questions.
Sure, I can happy to do so. Good afternoon or good evening, everyone. So my name is Mark Fornes. I have my studio, The Very Many in New York, has been presented before. We're very excited to be selected and recommended tonight for the Rodney Plaza project. And I think the type of work we do is trying to propose two things at the very least. One is to have some sort of signal, some sort of beacon, something to intrigue the community, something to attract the curious somehow. And the second thing is to propose an experience. Why an experience? Because the most important thing for us in terms of art is that it's engaging, that the community can enjoy it, can play with it, can wait, lose some time within that piece, around the piece or something like that. And I think those are the two major elements of the work we do. If ever a public art piece for us is successful, is something which is not just decoration, which is not just embellishment, but is something which is engaging for the community, something where you want to spend time, you want to bring your friend, you want just to be able to spend just a little lunch or waiting for someone, or if it is only becoming a Uber stop, whatever it is, it doesn't matter, but it's that it doesn't leave you indifferent, that it's just not decoration. So that's the type of work we're trying to propose on the Plaza. But I'm happy to respond to any specific question.
Do any of the commissioners have questions for Mr. Fornes?
Hi, it's a pleasure to meet you, and I love your work. I've been following it for a long time, so I'm thrilled at the possibility that you'll have a piece here in Walnut Creek. One question I did have is about maintenance for your pieces. Is there any specialized maintenance that we have to take into account?
No, it's nothing specialized. Like all the work we do, couple of aspects. First, we don't use steel, so there is no rusting of the piece. There is no loss of structure. We only use aluminium, very high grade of aluminium, so it's very highly resistant to corrosion. Then we protect it. So basically, it's a metal piece, but not a steel one. So there is no actual maintenance other than what we recommend is often just washing it with some hose so that there is not over dust and organic material where there is like, basically it's like leaving a car on a parking lot. You know, if you leave your car during 5 years without ever cleaning it, you're going to have that kind of organic material onto it that trigger surface corrosion. But I think the type of finish we are using to protect the metal and the fact that there is nothing fragile, nothing molded, nothing is welded on site, so there is no painting on site also happening. Everything is actually painted ready in the workshop, so the paint are much more resistant than actually something that would be done on site.
Great, thank you.
I'm curious about how you come upon a design in view of the environment of the building. This is a very busy building with lots of different shapes, and just wondering how that building influences you, and how what goes on inside the building influences your thought process.
Yes, it's a very good question. I think that's what's has been briefly explained before. I think we had an initial proposal not knowing the whole about that building, the function, what's happening also under the plaza, the way the plaza is engaged, also for some special event and some flexibility required. So our aim is to really, once we would get commissioned, is to come and visit and have a discussion with all the stakeholders, including the one running the center, the art center, in order to better understand where and what kind of strategy we could have. What we're trying to avoid probably is to be on the building. We're trying not to be decoration onto the building. We'll rather have some sort of dialogue with the building itself for that. So I think right now we do not have any kind of preconceived ideas for that. We would really like to come and enjoy a discussion and to be able to better position onto the plaza.
Thank you.
Any more questions? I guess we can have comments.
If there are no more questions, Chair, you can take public comment.
Does any member of the public wish to provide your public comments today? Thank you. Please
Thank you.
state your name.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Commissioners. My name is Catherine Baker. I am president of the Diablo Regional Arts Association Board of Directors, and here in that capacity. The DRA, of course, is the nonprofit partner with the Lesher Center for the Arts, and we support arts access and excellence in both the visual and performing arts at the center. And you can't see the big smile I have underneath this mask today because this is spectacular. We really want to thank you for the vision and commitment to bring high caliber, like world-renowned art, public art, to Walnut Creek for the residents and all who visit. Arts access and excellence is what the DRA is all about, and you're doing it with this, and we're excited. So we thank you for that. Congratulate you on being at this stage in the project. Also want to say thank you for the proposal before you today to include the DRA in the next steps and next conversations about the piece and its location. We want to be helpful. That's what we're all about as well. And whether it's as a sounding board or as a source of input or support, please count on the DRA to be there and partners with you as we have all through this process. It is in the spirit of that helpful partner that we do also want to elevate to you our encouragement that the commission evaluate very carefully and maybe update its evaluation of the location of this magnificent public art. As you've seen and heard, this is one that is intended to be spatial and an interactive experience. And it's a great to have that for Walnut Creek. We have to remember what Rodney Plaza is. It was originally envisioned as a fourth stage. It is a stage, performing space at the center. And we've had some recent events where we've needed every single inch of space of Rodney Plaza for on Broadway, for also the Pave the Way celebration that we had, the Pave the Way campaign, for summer concerts, for the future festivals that we'll have and the hundreds of children that we are looking forward to bringing back to the center. We need Rodney Plaza as that space. So we ask that you update that evaluation of the specific location, and we are here to help and be part of that conversation in any way we can. So we thank you for that.
Thank you. Do we have any more public commentary?
I was just going to state for the record that the namesake of Rodney Plaza is also in the audience. Eric Rodney is here, and I appreciate his presence and participation and support, not just for the plaza, but for public art and arts in general. So thank you, Eric.
Thank you.
If the chair would like to open it up to commissioner comment, now would be the time.
Already the time. Do any of the commissioners want to make a comment?
I do. Mark, I've been following your work for at least 3 or 4 years and dreaming of this day. I'm thrilled that you were interested in coming all the way out here to our pretty small town. We're just so excited to have you be here and to have your piece be here forever. And I'm just over the moon. I think it's wonderful. I love your work. My favorite one is the natatorium, but I think the Walnut Creek one will surpass that and become my new favorite. So thank you for being excited and being part of this process. It's a really significant thing for Walnut Creek. We've been working for this for 20 years. So thank you again.
Thank you so much. Very, very flattering. Thank you so much. Exciting.
If there are there any more comments?
I have a question, I think, in terms of, I just want clarification. We approved the locations already, right? Those are set?
Sorry, Steve, can I answer? As mentioned in the staff report, the location was approved in general by the commission back a year ago. We want to see how that relates to the actual concept. And so what we put in the staff report is that we're looking at the western portion of the plaza, which is, I think, consistent with the intent of the commission. And so given that we didn't know the concept of the artist or even the artist at that time, we will be engaged in, assuming the contract gets approved, in a conversation with stakeholders, with the artist, with staff, perhaps even a representative of the commission, to identify the best location for that piece, consistent with the original goals for that. So we're open to continue to hear input and feedback from the community as we move this forward. So excited for Mark to come and take a fresh look at that and see what makes the most sense for his vision and the vision for the plaza.
I do have one comment, and Mark, I really enjoyed listening to your comments about your goals for the piece being a beacon and engaging the community and being an experience, because that's definitely what we've had as our goal all along for this piece, so that it's not just a decoration, but it's something that people can interact with. So I'm excited to see what you come up with.
Thank you.
I'll go next. Mark, I've heard you speak about your experience in your past, your other art pieces that you have. I was on the selection panel, so I've heard you before, and I, like Commissioner Emanuel, I saw the talent right away, and I was fighting to get you to be the artist chosen. So I am very excited for that, so welcome. And I also really appreciated your comments about bringing this sense of wonder and sort of this enthusiasm that people should have to reach out for invention on their own instead of having something that is kind of done before, seen before, can be easily replaced. And so I'm looking forward to having something completely unique made for Walnut Creek. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ryan.
I have a general question for us, I guess, as well as for Mark, and that is that we have a spot on the plaza, but I believe that when we last talked about location, we talked about the possibility of things being on the building as well. And is that still a possibility? And that might open up this fourth stage a little bit more if there was some extra leeway for the use of the building.
I don't want to preempt Mark's answer, but we really are talking about a work that would be freestanding, and I think that's what Mr. Fornes is most interested in, not being attached to building and not really be kind of adjunct to the building.
Okay.
But I've already answered for you, haven't I, Mark? But please feel free to weigh in and add.
I think it's an important component of engagement. I think if it's attached to the building, it becomes often kind of embellishment or decoration. We really want something where people can, of different age, the kids will want to play, the adult will want to wait, and enjoy a moment within something. But we also hear the comment was made before about trying to keep the plaza as flexible and as free as possible. So our idea is, if ever possible, is to try to work together and get a piece that is both attractive, engaging, and maybe could be functional one way or another. That could be also a potential, so that we are not an obstacle for future events, but we could maybe be more support for it, hosting a part of what could happen on the plaza, for example. That could be something we could explore.
If the chair feels that that's it for commissioner comments, you can ask for a motion.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure no one else wanted to make a comment or to have questions. Okay. So at this time, we ask one of the commissioners to make a motion, or would you like me to make a motion? I can do that.
Well, I'll remind that there's two motions that you need to make. One with regard to the current artist, Mr. Fornes, and then the alternative, if you wish to make that too.
Or we're going to have discussion.
If the commission wishes to, absolutely.
Yeah, okay. So I move to recommend the city council award a contract of $415,000 to Mr. Mark Fornes to create a public artwork for the Rodney Plaza, as recommended by the project selection panel, and
Second.
I'll take the roll. Chair Clapper,
yes.
Commissioner Cowdery,
Absolutely, yes.
Commissioner Manuel,
Yes, with great pleasure.
and Commissioner Meredith.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carries 4-0.
Congratulations, Mark.
Congratulations.
Thank you so much for the support. Very excited.
We're very lucky. Thank you.
If I might comment, so at this point, we wanted to thank Mark, and you're very welcome to stay on, but it's not necessary. We're going to move on to talk about the alternate artist who, if you might have heard, would only be in the event that you couldn't do the work, and that's unlikely, so, yeah.
No, thank you so much for having me tonight, and I'm very excited about the project, and I see you very soon in Walnut.
We're looking. Have a
Thank
good
you.
evening.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Aye.
So could we bring up the item C? It's the one.
We did it.
So I wanted to give you and the artist blessing the opportunity to have seen her work too, which the panel has. So I didn't write much about it in the report, but Blessing Hancock's a very accomplished artist who's done work Bay Area and around the country. Go to the next image. Does a lot of work that's translucent, works often with light, and is fairly eclectic. She has a piece that I admire a great deal that is in front of the Palo Alto Library. I think it might be in these images. You can go for it. You can see she works with perforation and, go forward, and with text. So a lot of her work has text that creates shadow effects by day and especially by evening, and the text is gathered through workshops with community. So phrases and words that are relevant and important to community and are really generated by them and not by the artist at all. So she has a very interesting style. You can go forward. She's originally from Arizona and is based in Hawaii now. This work is in Emeryville at one of their office parks. Very resting, and I wanted to note that it is pretty effective by day and by night. You go to the next image. I think the next image is actually day. Well, no, it's not. Okay. Amy, could you go to the other attachment for this item? Now, Blessing did submit a concept, and there were two phases, there were two pieces to it. The first was a kind of a signature sculpture that resembled a vessel or a teardrop or raindrop that would be on the plaza, and it would be illuminated. It would have text in the sort of interstitial lines there. It would be, she talked a great deal about how the piece would actually have quite a presence and would be well illuminated by sunlight by day and then work at night as well. We were talking with her about scale, were she to be selected, and she actually designed it at a little bit lower scale than she would want to ultimately. Again, she didn't have the benefit of having been here when she developed the concept. So this gives you some renderings of what it might look like. If you can go on. Additionally, she wanted to do some lanterns in the portico hanging from the ceiling, and they would also cast colors, shadows, and from the perforations onto the walls and floor of the portico. So it was like a secondary element. And to Commissioner Cowdery's question, or maybe, I'm sorry, maybe Commissioner Manuel, this was one of the locations we mentioned as an option, was inside the portico. So she was proposing to do both. Can you go on? The panel did not specifically recommend Ms. Hancock. We did not ask them to, but we usually do try to have an alternate. So at following the meeting, we did put this forward to you in your report that we recommended to have Blessing as an alternate. And again, it's only in the event that Mr. Fornes cannot do the project. It's not an either or, because the panel was very clear on their top choice, which is Mr. Fornes. But they did feel very strongly about Ms. Hancock as well, ranking her in the first panel as equal with Mr. Fornes until they came back to the second panel. So I just wanted to share that with you.
Thank you.
You can take it.
Thank you, Steve. Appreciate that. Commissioners, do you have any questions for Steve regarding this motion to vote for an alternative artist if the contract with Mr. Fornes falls through.
Are you asking for questions or comments?
At this time, I'm asking for questions. Yeah. Okay, so I guess we can go to comments if you guys want to have comments to be made at this point before we take a vote.
My only comment is that if it does come down to having blessing doing the work, that we really make sure that it shows well during the day and at night, because we haven't had the best of luck with sculptures that are, or art that's reliant on lighting.
Would you like to?
I share Glynis's comments, and I feel I need to go a little bit further with it. Having seen her presentation, I felt that the evening light was overwhelming and very competitive with what was going on in the building, particularly with the portico having those lanterns. And it would have been a light show. And I think when people come to the Leisure Theater, we don't want to overwhelm them so that becomes the biggest show. They're here for the show inside, and we don't want anything to compete with the other art, such as the murals and the new murals that are coming. And I just felt that it was overdone and overwhelming. So I can't support having her as a backup. I also wanted to mention she's got about 4 works in the Bay Area. I think there's one coming in Santa Rosa, one thing I had seen on the website. I also, of course, as we said, have been uncomfortable with the works that we have approved that involve light, and feel that it is very difficult to pull off where it works both at night and during the day. So that's my comments.
Thank you, Commissioner Emanuel.
Can I ask a question?
Of course.
If we don't approve the artist as a backup, what would happen if Mark couldn't do the piece? Would we start all over again, or what would the process look like?
Well, staff recommendation would be to start again. Start again, and I would probably recommend a different kind of process, maybe even open, completely open. I think we would have run the course of this process, so that's what I would recommend.
I have a comment. Well, I said before that I was on the selection panel, and the panel unanimously voted for Mark Fornes. The panel was brought together to vote for one artist, and we did that. And so from a process perspective, I don't think that we can now introduce an alternate because that panel did not choose that alternate, number one. And I also, having listened to all of the questions and comments during the panel, my sense is that that panel felt like Mark Fornes, the idea of his art is so far beyond any of the other, the 4 other artists we saw, that it just would not be, I don't want to use the word fairness, but it wouldn't be for Walnut Creek. It wouldn't fit Walnut Creek to go back to any of those 4. And so to have an alternate wouldn't work. And so I would prefer if we just started the process all over again if the contract fell through.
I'm also have another clarifying question. I don't remember ever being asked to approve a secondary artist for murals or any other projects we've ever had before. So I guess I'm wondering is there some concern about whether or not the very many can complete this sculpture? Or is it just as a safety guard because so much time was invested in the process initially? I'm just wondering why this time and not other times.
I think we have actually asked for alternates. What we've done with the murals is to name lists of artists. And, I mean, in a sense, I guess they're both finalists and alternates. And so, like I think for Duncan, I believe we had several alternates, or maybe I'm thinking of one of the previous murals, but I think we did actually ask the commission to do that, which is, to be frank, is easier in a way to do because it's not as hard on the panel. They don't have to narrow it down quite as much. So we'll end up and rank them in order. And we've also done that in the project that's coming up for the courtyard murals. But I think we've done that before, and I usually try to do that. In any case, though, with respect to Chair Klauber's comments, we did not ask this panel to do that, as it was an omission, so that they are not on the record as having recommended that.
Yes, please, Commissioner Meredith.
I'd like to agree with the other commissioners about the quality of her work. There's just no comparison with Mark's work. And I think I agree with the chairperson about Walnut Creek deserves the best. And I think this would just really be a compromise that I think we would ultimately be disappointed in. So I support not having an alternate. I'd rather start the process over.
I thank you for your comment. Thank you. With that, then, do we make the opposite of the motion that was proposed? And make no motion.
Well, if someone wishes to make a motion, they may. It's not required.
If it's not required, let's not do it.
Well, I think before speaking for the full commission, you can ask if there's a motion, and if there is not, then there will not be.
Thank you. Is there a motion? There's no motion on the floor.
Okay. Staff thanks the commission for their direction, and we have our marching orders with regard to Mr. Fornes, and we're excited about that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. So, next on the agenda item is the review and take action on the Austral restaurant / Ciela Terrace public art concept. So,
Thank you.
Steve, if you could take the floor and give us
Yes.
a presentation.
Yeah, thank you very much. This project is the renovation of the restaurant building at 1403 Locust Street at the corner of Locust and Cypress. In July, your commission approved the site for public artwork, which is the facade wall on the Cypress Street frontage, and the selection of artist Colette Crutcher. The applicant selected tile mosaic as the preferred medium for artwork, reflecting mosaic's heritage in the Mediterranean context. We did receive a design concept from the applicant's new design proposal from Ms. Crutcher, and we called a special meeting of the Public Art Committee to review the concept on October 18. And we included that concept in your original agenda packet, which I hope you've had an opportunity to review. That original concept was reviewed by the Public Art Committee, which supported the overall direction of the design with its central landscape and sea motifs. They supported the color palette and the composition within the 3 wall recesses that serve as conceptual windows to the scenes. However, the committee did express concern about the literalness of depicting figures preparing food due to the nature of the business, which is a Mediterranean dining establishment. The committee asked for design revisions that would come to the full commission for approval. And today, the applicants provided a revised design by the artist, which they have incorporated into the proposal package. We provided this to the commission earlier today, and it's now posted online as an addendum to the agenda, and we have hard copies here in the chambers for the public. So we've got that proposal here, and tonight I believe we are joined by artist Colette Crutcher and the project architects, Ralph Gentile and Candace Goodwin. And we may have one of the clients who will own and operate the restaurant, Mr. Gobbin, here too. Who's going to pull the, do we know that we have them online or no?
I'm here.
Oh, it sounds like Colette.
That's perfect.
Oh,
Ralph.
Ralph, great, okay.
I'm like,
We hear you. I don't see you yet, but I hear
oh,
you.
wait, start video. Sorry.
Hey,
oh,
all
There
right,
I am.
great. Well, this is Colette, who you may have, I think you actually met before, and Ralph is the principal architect on the project. So.
Hello, everybody.
I wanted to invite you both to briefly describe the concept and how it responds to the initial concept too, and how it responds to the concerns the committee raised, and then answer questions that may come from the board. We don't have the best visual. We have the PDF, and it's showing up a little bit small, but of course, you already know it, so you don't necessarily need the visual guide. So who would like to lead off a little bit about this one?
Well, I can start in. I really appreciate the feedback that I got last week, which helped to refine the concept. And frankly, there was a problem with just taking a lot of input from a lot of different directions and feeling like I wanted to please everyone and finding that it was not. It was becoming art by committee, and it just wasn't working for any of us. And so I got some very constructive criticism, and it really helped me to refine my concept and make it into something much less literal, not just a scene of people at a restaurant or cooks making pizza or anything like that, but more a more possibly mythological or allegorical approach to landscape, the bounty of the earth, the similarities between the Mediterranean landscape and climate and what we have here in California. So references to some of the food items that are shared in California cuisine and Mediterranean cuisine, olives, eggplant, grapes, that kind of a thing, and working with the elements of earth, fire, and water. So that was my basic concept, and I tried to include examples of how something that starts out as a drawing becomes transformed by the mosaic medium. I work with both handmade tile and commercial tile, which is sawed. You can see that in the smoke detail here. The tile sawed and then shaped. And so there's a huge variety of effects that can be created with this medium, and it's a little challenging in a drawing to convey what the real feeling of the concreteness, the tactile aspect, the three-dimensional sculptural relief aspect that I'm going to this, which makes it much more of a presence on the street, attractive to children, adults, passersby. There's a real magic to this kind of tile work with the way that glazes create color reflectivity and depth. And so that's what I want to bring to this location.
Yeah, next page, please. Next page. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Can you
At this
more than that, or no?
time, I'd like to ask the commissioners if you have any questions.
I have a question about the lighting for the piece. I know the report said there'll be architectural lighting, but the image doesn't show any lighting, and I just want to know, are we going to see the lighting above the piece, or is it recessed, or does it come from a spot someplace else so we won't see lighting on this wall in addition to the murals?
Yeah, so I'm probably the best person to answer that question. We do have a lighting designer involved in this project. Rizika, Betty Ann Andrews is our project lighting designer. And what we've cleverly done, these triptychs are actually recessed into the wall, the depth of a brick. And fortunately now with controllable LED lighting, we can wash them very gently from the sides, and so that we don't have lights above or spots on them or whatever. We're actually lighting some other surfaces on the building in a similar way, and we expect great things from that. Part of the character of the mosaics is what Colette was pointing to, is that they're not flat, that they have three-dimensionality, they have joints, they have items that actually work very well with a night light situation. And overhead goosenecks or things like that aren't very effective in making those show. So we have a great affinity for the direction that Colette is taking, and we currently have a building department set completed with the lighting in place. But the other thing that we know we have to do is to do some tests as things develop. We'll have the opportunity to see in the process that Colette does. We have the opportunity to see a portion of it already complete in her studio, and our intention is to have the lighting designer take a look at those, make sure she's aware of the materials that are being used, and have a collaboration to get the most out of it. Obviously during the day it looks really nice, but at night we really want it to have a great presence there too.
Great.
So I hope I've answered the questions. They're basically thin LEDs that wash the surface from the two sides mostly, and from the bottom. We've decided not to shine down from above because sometimes that gives a bad cast because you're seeing the wash come from above.
Great.
So we have paid some attention to it, and we think we have a good start, and then we're going to do a final test with Colette's materials in her studio.
Perfect, okay. And then the other question I did have was more about the process, just out of curiosity. It sounds like you do this all off-site? Do you actually do
I do, yes.
So it comes all mounted and then you put it up and grout it, or do you?
I mount it on a polypropylene mesh, and then it is installed by tile setters, and then it's cemented into place, and then it's grouted in place.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Hello, I have a question. So when these three pieces or the triptych is put into place, embedded into the wall, how hard would it be to take the three pieces out if needed? Everybody wants the restaurant project to be super successful and et cetera, but what if it isn't, right? Restaurants are known statistically not to do so well. So what would we do then?
Well, that was part of the reason for the redesign, to take away the specificity of the original design, which referred more directly to Austral as a restaurant and its theme. And this piece is more generalized, more California related, and I think it can happily stay on the wall no matter what kind of restaurant or establishment is there. It would be possible to create it in movable panels, but that adds a degree of complexity and difficulty to the process, and we had discussed that earlier and decided that that was not a direction that we needed to go. So As I'm planning it, it will be permanently installed.
Okay. That's interesting. Okay, so, and the other question that I have is, this drawing that is on the screen right now, if you can see what I'm seeing, is that more or less the direction that you think is appropriate or more appropriate than the previous? And
Yes.
and then I would caution, oh, I guess it's not comment time yet, but I'm wondering, given all the fires that the state of California has had, why we would put a fire on a wall.
Well, I specifically created it within I mean, I thought about that. The scary,
Yeah,
horrible side of fire.
right.
Which is why I made it contained it's in a container. It's a reference to the hearth, cooking, the uses of fire that are essential to civilization and to humankind.
And is that so?
And so I don't see it as a threatening fire, but a nurturing fire.
And you would reconsider that, replacing the fire with another image if possible? I mean, I don't want to take away from your creative, from your artistry at all, but would that be something you could consider?
I feel that it's fairly important to the concept. I could see making the flames somewhat smaller, less dominant within the panel. Everyone involved so far has been enthusiastic about the fire aspect, and I did curtail it from how it originally was drawn because specifically I within a California context, I didn't want to create something upsetting.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I don't know how others feel.
Well, we understand that there's also, we've just had a big storm come off the Pacific. And your panel
There's rain in there.
is, probably my friend, this fisherman who's out in a storm. These are natural events, obviously, and, I think, we've talked about the allegory and myth that is steering us in a more poetic manner. So, I think we leave it to Colette to select the subject matter, and I think she obviously lives in the Bay Area. She's very sensitive to the issues that happen there, but this goes back to mythology. I mean, we wouldn't have Homer if he wasn't caught in a storm. He would never have told the story. So I'm not saying that natural disasters are things to be celebrated, but it seems like a hearth and a flame is something that's essential to civilization. So is the orchards, the fields, the grain, the grapes, and also fishing and being on the sea and taking the bounty of the sea. So, I think Colette has been sensitive to that in our opinion, but obviously you're the committee and you have every right to comment and bring up those sensitivities and ask if we thought about them. So.
And we have.
Thank you both. My fellow commissioners have other questions? Okay, if there are no questions, then at this time we'll move to comments.
Jerry, you want to open to public comment first? Thank you.
Oh, yes. Are there any public comments at this time?
Chair, at this time, there are no members of the public wishing to make comment. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone?
I saw the original proposal, and I think what you've really taken to heart the comments that we made about being too specific to the proposed use of the building. I think it's much more universal. It can reflect a number of themes that either can or are not relevant to whatever's going on in the restaurant. I think it's just more of a appropriate street scene. So I thank you for listening to us and coming up with something that is vastly improved. So thank you.
Thank you.
Do you want to say? Okay. This is a tenant, so I assume that the owner of the building has been involved in the development of the project and feels that it's okay for whatever kind of tenant there would be in the future, whether it be insurance or, whatever. So I don't feel that it's too specific to the food industry or to restaurants. I wanted to especially make note of something that I think is really quite lovely about this, is that each panel is continued a bit into the next one without being overdone, but the elements are repeated, whether it be the clouds or the waves, the floor table or mat, that's the geometric design. I think it's really done very, very lovely, and I think that's just a real big part of the whole composition. It's funny, we all see it differently. Everybody takes something away from it, and I saw the fire as a place where people gather, and the warmth of the hearth, and having the safety of having the food from the sea and being able to grow things, and that's what makes art interesting, that everyone sees it differently. So, thank you.
Well, thank you. That was the way I intended it.
So my comment is it's a lovely piece, and it's completely different from what you had before. I would only, again, just, I guess, I questioned, but my question before is associated with the comment that I would have, which when I saw it, I thought, oh my God, we just went over 200 days with no rain and possibility of fires. And that's the first thing that came to my mind. But beside that, in the other point, which is, the Greek column on the left side, if this space were to be a different restaurant or something that is not Greek, somebody might go, wow, that's very Mediterranean Greek cuisine, sort of, a octopus on the water. Octopus is part of their cuisine. But other than that, I think I agree with Jane. I love the fact that it's sort of it's a triptych in the sense that the clouds continue and the mountain range continues. And so it's very cool. I like that. So
The Japanese eat octopus, by the way.
Yeah, with Greek columns next to them.
That's actually, are you seeing the rainstorm as a column?
Yeah, I am.
Oh.
Okay.
Yeah, it's clouds.
I say the ionic column.
Colette, maybe we could go back to the prior slide so we see the imagery a little bit bigger,
Sure, yes, yeah,
go all the way back. Because that.
yeah, and
that's
that,
better. Okay.
it's clouds and rain, actually.
Oh, I see. Okay. Yeah. oh,
And
it's-
that,
It's,
of course, will be clearer when it's at size but yeah, it's, I call them,
thank you for clarifying that.
okay.
Okay.
Colette, I just want to thank you again for your revision. And I think we said at the meeting that, your landscapes were so beautiful. And I love the fact that you really focused on the landscapes with this redesign. It really, I'm really excited to see it in person.
Well, thank you.
I had another question. I think at our last discussion, there was some discussion about the trees, and the trees on that street are pretty full. Has there been any discussion with landscape people as to thinning them out so that the art would be more visible to people on the street?
So again, that's probably a question for me.
Mm-hmm.
The city arborist has inspected the trees and has a report on what we're meant to do with them. He's aware of the mural location. And so those aren't really our trees, they're the city trees. So we'll be following his recommendation for either replacement of the trees or trimming or whatever the arborist says. That's kind of in the hands of Public Works and their direction.
Okay. Well, I'll turn to the commissioners and see if there is a motion on the floor.
I'd like to move approval of Colette Crutcher as the artist and approve the design as well.
I'll second that.
Thank you. With the motion, Commissioner Cowdery. Commissioner Cowdery,
Yes.
thank you. Commissioner Manuel,
Yes.
Commissioner Meredith,
Yes.
and Chair Klauber.
Yes.
Motion carries 4-0. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank
We
you.
Thank you
appreciate
both.
it.
Great, thank you.
Thank you for coming. Thank you. Colette, Ralph.
Right. Next item under consideration is item 4D. It's a recommendation to allocate funds to renovate the Veterans Memorial Plaza. Steve, please.
Thank you, Chair.
Yep.
Almost 20 years ago, the city set out to commission a grand memorial to veterans of all branches of the American military, the Army, Navy, Air Force, Coast Guard, and Marines, as a central civic space occupying a large portion of City Hall Plaza. It was completed in 2004 by artist and landscape architect Cliff Garton. The entire Memorial Plaza is a work of public art, from the granite columns along Civic to the reflecting pool to the dedicatory wall that borders the parking lot. The memorial has been exposed to the environment around the clock for 17 years and heavily used. It's weathered the ongoing phenomenological challenges facing California, including chronic drought. It's experienced significant wear and tear consistent with outdoor installations, especially those that include a water feature and landscaping. It requires continual maintenance, and beyond the regular maintenance, birch trees have suffered and are dying from pest infestation exacerbated by our drought. The original grasses in the landscape have changed. They need replacing. The fountain basin lining has failed over time, and there is considerable and obvious visual damage. The fountain pumps are often clogged with leaves and trash and must be dealt with several times a month. All these things create a high maintenance situation that's expensive to the city in terms of time, labor, and materials. But perhaps more important, the appearance of the memorial has degraded and does not reflect the city's best face to the public or to the veterans it honors. Public Works has provided tons of maintenance and repair over the years, but we need at this point to move beyond simple Band-Aid fixes. Staff is proposing a complete solution to these issues: trees, grasses, fountain, pool, and basin. The city's original contract with the artist requires us to maintain it as closely as possible to original conditions. We are compelled to consult with the artist on any changes, and they need to be supported by the artist. In this case, the artist's job really is to help us refresh the project, suggesting alterations that will achieve our goals while they continue to honor the intentions of the original memorial. Now, we've been in touch with Mr. Garton, and he has carefully thought through the best way forward to restore the grandeur and gravity of the memorial while instituting more practical, manageable, and sustainable functions and materials. He studied the current conditions and has provided us with revised landscape specifications. For example, the trees have been overcrowded. He's in agreement with us to reduce their number while keeping enough trees to maintain the visual massing that creates much of the memorial's effect. His plan actually includes a new species of more drought-tolerant tree, and the trees are actually an inexpensive part of the budget, though a disproportionate amount of the visual impact. We hope with these new hardier tree species and grasses to reduce the challenges of the drought, overcrowding, and fragility that has afflicted the memorial. But these changes won't come without significant cost. Major maintenance has been deferred for many years on the memorial, while our Public Works Department has kept it functional and its best possible appearance on a rolling, regular basis. But it's time now to invest in it and not only restore, but improve the central civic space. So we're asking tonight the Art Commission to approve a public art funded budget of $230,000 that will support new replacement trees, new grasses, improvements in cleaning of the fountain pump, resurfacing the pool basin, and all construction management and contingencies. These funds must be drawn from the Public Art Fund, which is a very appropriate use of those dollars, as it is intended to be used towards conservation, maintenance, and management of our collection, as well as commission and acquisition of new work. The Public Works Department has already committed $15,000 toward the trees, in addition to the $35,000 line item we're budgeting for trees. In other words, we have a $50,000 tree replacement budget. The Arts Commission, the public, Arts and Rec, City Manager's Office, and Council are definitely all aware and alert to the deterioration of the memorial, and I know eager to see it restored and improved, but it is essential that we move forward with this work soon. Now, if the funds are approved at commission level, that recommendation will go to council, and staff will begin the project as soon as possible with our goal to complete new tree and grass planting this fall and winter. As I said, your recommendation would have to be referred to the council. They must approve the use of any allocation from public art. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Steve. I'll open the floor for questions from my fellow commissioners.
I have a few. Steve, I just want to clarify what you said earlier regarding the Public Art Fund balance. My understanding is that the $450 for the Rodney Plaza is included in this balance here. So if we take that out, we only have about $1 million left in Public Art Fund?
That's more or less true. $315,000 of the Rodney Plaza budget is included in the Public Art Fund. The other $100,000 is the RAA funds we have in a separate account. But that's correct. It would have to be drawn from the balance that we showed. It's not already appropriated elsewhere.
And do we know, are there any in lieu funds in the pipeline that aren't reflected in this balance?
I do know there are some, but I'm not able to tell you what they are at this time, and I think we may have a couple of projects that have been giving us prorated over the several years. But we can track that down for you. I don't have it at this moment.
So the budget includes replacement trees up to 80. You stated that the artist is open to having fewer trees. I counted the other day, and I only counted 77 trees, including the 6 that have been cut down. What number are we really looking at in terms of the redesign?
Well, 90 was the original number, so there may have been some trees that have failed since it went in. We talked to him about reducing the number. He said maybe 80, maybe fewer, but he is in the process of, he will be doing a actual landscape plan, which is not drawn up, and his goal, as I said, is to retain the sense of a grid of trees with an effect that there are enough trees that they create a kind of a mass. So he's open to having fewer than 80, but it's partly depends on aesthetic, and we really need to go through that process with him to determine that.
And how are these trees watered?
I'm not sure.
There's an irrigation system in place.
Is it recycled water, or is it,
Oh.
It's recirculated water, yeah.
what does that mean? I mean, is that the same thing? I mean, I know the fountain's recirculated, but the trees, is it all coming out of?
So according to Public Works, it's not recycled water, it's just recirculated. So the water that's in the pool, once it goes back through the filtration system, it comes back out into the pools. As far as irrigation is concerned, I'm assuming it's potable water, just like any other irrigation system.
And do you know how much of the construction management and contingency budget is actually contingency versus management?
I don't know how that line item breaks out.
It's not based on a certain percentage, or, I mean, how do you figure out contingency?
I'm not aware.
Steve, so that budget came from the waterworks company that we are currently working with, and they did not break out the contingency plan.
I have a question. So do we know yet what type of tree species are going to be replacing the current ones?
Yeah, so this is all proposed, so nothing is finalized, but Mr. Garten is proposing a ginkgo, kind of ginkgo tree, which is a hardier and does not require as much water, and it would change the appearance somewhat too, which is why I was trying to emphasize that as it is an artwork, and he's the one that had the vision, I think it behooves the artist to work with that project so that if there are adjustments, it still creates an effect that honors the original concept, even if it might change somewhat in appearance. So he is trying to create a project that not only has integrity, restores the integrity of the site, but creates even new excitement and energy around it, so truly refreshes it. And that's why he's proposing a tree that tries to meet a couple of needs. The birch is more vulnerable and not native, so he's looking at a ginkgo. I haven't seen the proposed species, so I think we're going to be exploring this with him.
And could he explore with staff a tree that's native to the area?
He can, yeah. He has spent some considerable pro bono time looking at trees that he thought would suit the needs, but we can definitely refer that back to him about natives.
And would he be invited to come speak with us? Because this is such a significant amount of
Yes,
funds.
definitely, and though he might need to do it remotely, but yes, we can invite him to do that. He's, as I said, he's been doing it as a pro bono consultant, and he's not actually on a contract to do the work, but
Right.
yeah.
And is he, you mentioned that he's coming up with landscaping drawings. So his pro bono work now, which we're thankful that he would provide, is associated with landscaping. Is any of that associated with the actual art element or elements within the
No.
plaza?
The whole piece is a conceptual artwork. So the trees are a piece of the artwork. And the overall layout impact of it is part of the art concept. So there aren't discrete art elements that you can separate that are the art versus landscaping. His project is a landscape artwork.
Okay. And then back to the balance amount that is on the agenda report. How long did it take us to get to that amount?
The 1.4 million?
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't say how long it took us to get to that amount. I know that we had, what was that? I think when maybe been 2 years or so back, we had a balance that was 1.1, or maybe even in the nines. I'm looking at Commissioner Emanuel because she might remember. But so it has grown fairly well in the last couple of years, actually.
So it went from 1.2 to
From
1.4?
1.1
Even,
to 1.45.
what I'm asking is, how long does it take to reach a million?
There's no real answer to that because these are in lieu fees.
Irregular.
They're subject to the ebbs and flows of what is going on in construction and which projects decide to pay in lieu as opposed to like on the Austral project where they're doing art on site. It's very hard to say.
Okay, right, and does the artist, he's, I guess, communicated with you that this budget seems appropriate for what he has in mind to design?
He's not really involved in the budget that relates to the hardware elements. What we've run by him was our proposed improvements. And incidentally, the budget, but he's really not commented on the budget. So he supports the improvements we're making. Most of them are, they're subtler or more invisible of the functions, but where he has talked with us is about the trees and grasses, which we've costed out, actually. So he's not really involved in the budget discussion.
And then I'm curious as to how Public Works is picking up 15,000 of this amount. It indicates to me that there is some sort of understanding, knowledge that all of the cost should not be hitting the Public Art Fund if Public Works is picking up 15,000. So why would they pick up, tell me about why this 15,000 is here? Like, how did that come about?
I don't know, I wonder if Emily might be able to answer to that a bit more.
Sure. So that is what Public Works can help with as far as tree replacement is concerned. However, over the last 17 years, Public Works has maintained the public art for us, which, has cost them thousands of dollars in manual labor, in materials costs. And so they have contributed to this public art project over the last, 17 years financially from their department. And so this extra $15,000 is to help replace the trees. But the financial burden for the replacement of the pool lining and the rest of the trees and the grasses falls squarely on public art.
This is public space, correct?
Correct.
So, in public space is part of Public Works' responsibility to care for whatever the cost is, right?
We have had a working relationship with Public Works, and they help us maintain almost all the public art in the city.
Okay. And again, the items, the itemized list here is trees, grass, pump cleaning, pool resurfacing, basin resurfacing, algae control. These are all sort of public space items, typically, correct?
Maybe I can, I know I've sort of addressed this, maybe I'll say it a little bit differently. This is a functioning piece of public art, so it's a piece of public art that moves and grows and interacts. But every piece of it is part of an artwork. So we don't, and it was commissioned that way too, with public art funds. So to talk about it as something we could separate out pieces that are not art or that are really just engineering, I don't think is a valid way to talk about it. To reiterate what Emily said, though, Public Works has been our partner to maintain pieces, including the memorial, and has contributed a lot to that for that reason. There are other projects too where they've helped us with lighting and cleaning and other things like that. So we're actually fortunate that they're involved at all. Sometimes programs, cities, especially when they're really cash strapped, will just turn back and say, you know, you commissioned that piece and you're completely responsible. In those programs, which are usually with more mature collections that have been around longer, the departments have to be extremely careful to actually budget. When they commission a new project, they often will actually break out the project budget in line items, and one of them is maintenance, ongoing maintenance. They have to set that aside and even invest it to be sure they have funds in the future. So we're in a fortunate position to have the cooperation and synergy with Public Works that they are willing to do that maintenance. But yeah, I think it does need to be seen as like a functioning, living piece of art. So, and every element, every component of it is part of that.
Thank you for that. Do other commissioners have more additional
Yes.
questions?
Mhm.
Please go ahead.
Do you know how much this piece cost originally? Because I think I do remember. Maybe you do, Kevin. I think it was something like $387,000. Or,
Yeah, I don't recall. This was 17 years ago. Many public art projects have come our way.
I kind of remember that, and 17 years ago? I thought I was on the commission then.
2004 it was finished. Yeah.
Well, I would just remember some of the numbers of when we would say, okay, what does a piece of public art cost? So maybe that was about right. So it's astounding to think that we are now basically rebuilding this piece of art at an amount of money that's 2/3 of what it originally cost. This isn't ongoing maintenance. This is almost a total reconstruction. The only thing that isn't going to be touched are the columns. They don't always look so great either. But, so that worries me, that this is a huge expense for a piece of art that is failing, is really failing. And I can see that in another 10 years, it's going to fail again. And we'll go through that again. So that is what we did, and so we have to live with that. So that's a comment. I guess that wasn't really a question, but I was concerned about who's doing the work, and whether it's in-house or whether it's being parsed out to some professionals that don't work for the city.
I'm going to speak to that, and correct me if I'm wrong, please. I believe the work on the pool, basin, fountains will all be done by a contractor, and that the installation of landscaping would be done by the city.
So I was also concerned about the construction management and contingency. What is the construction management, and who does that?
That's for the contractors doing the work, I believe.
Pardon me?
I believe that's the contractor who will be brought on to do the work.
So the contractor's going to get paid, $50,000 or something to monitor the $105,000 of the pump and the pool basin?
Well, I don't think those line items include labor. I think they're material costs. So that is the fee to manage and execute.
And is this considered to be reasonable?
This is a budget was provided to us by Public Works, and I believe they are pretty experienced, so I have confidence in it.
It's hard to imagine that 105,000 doesn't include the workers to do the work. So is the Public Works putting in the trees and the grasses?
That was my understanding, yeah.
And are we, I don't know how to ask this question because I don't know enough about how the budget works. Is this credited, or is this reduces our fund and gets moved over to the Public Works Fund? How does that work? I mean, they're paying $15,000 for trees. And what about the
Is this an accounting question? How we move the money from the public art fund
No,
to, I'm just trying.
I guess it's an accounting, but I
Yeah,
just wonder why it just wouldn't be something that Public Works does as their normal job.
Right.
And why it's being taken out of our fund. It has to go somewhere. If it's being taken out of our fund, it goes into the general fund?
Right.
Goes
Well-
into the general fund?
You're asking about how the contractor gets paid?
No, not the contractor. I assume the contractor is getting paid out of the Public Art Fund.
Right.
But the rest of it, the 35,000 and the 25,000 for the trees and grasses,
Right, those go from, we'd be paying for those materials, right? So the trees would be coming out of the public art fund, the grasses would be coming out of the public art fund. So whether it goes through an accounting exercise to go through the general fund, perhaps, but it's still coming out of the public art fund.
okay, so we buy the trees and the grasses, but who puts them in? Oh, we buy the trees and the grasses, and who puts them in? Public Works does.
Yeah, it's either Public Works is doing the work and the labor is already paid for because they're part of the general fund. So are you asking, I don't think you're asking this, that we pay for the labor as well, the Public Works is?
That's what I'm asking, I think.
We're not paying for the labor if it's Public Works. If it's a
We're not
contract,
paying for the labor, Public Works is doing it.
if it's Public Works doing the work directly, that's coming out of their budget, correct?
Okay, that makes me feel better. Okay, I don't have any more questions.
And I'll just clarify or amplify my response, which is, as staff has said already, Public Works has put in thousands of hours into maintaining this public art project, whether it's the maintenance of the grasses or the pumps or the circulating water, et cetera. So this is something that we don't take for granted. They have been a good partner to us. And so the fact that they're even contributing $15,000 is something we're grateful for. And we look forward to their continued support for this and Fountainhead and all the other projects that they support us on without charging us back, which is great. So I think this has been a good partnership that we want to see continue. And I think this proposal that you see in front of you is something that was developed in partnership with Public Works. So I'm respectful of their numbers. If the contingency isn't all used, we'll get that back into the fund, just FYI.
I agree. I just wanted to understand how the process works, and it feels like we're undertaking a bigger burden than we should have to, but I think it's because we've ended up with a piece that requires that, and that's a lesson learned, and that, in the future, maybe we'd be careful about that kind of ongoing maintenance as when we're looking at an art piece. I don't think I have anything else I don't have anything else to say.
Thank you, Commissioner Emanuel. Further
Some additional
questions?
Sorry, I have some additional questions. I'm assuming, Steve, that was this put out to bid, so that this is the lowest bid? Was the process followed, so it was put out to bid?
It's either the lowest bid or the only bid or both.
Well, and you said that, only bid. They did ask for multiple bids. So.
Yeah, I believe the Public Works actually did look for multiple contractors. The best bid they had back was this one, the one that was most met the charge anyway.
And
It may not have been lowest, but it definitely was the one that was most qualified.
And has there been any discussion? I would think that Public Works would be really interested in having trees that don't lose their leaves and plug up the system. And if I'm familiar with Kinko leaves, they're pretty big.
You lose them.
So was there any discussion about finding a tree that isn't going to, I mean, this is kind of the definition of insanity as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to say anything is uncertain about it, but the trees is not a finalized plan. That's where Mr. Garten is with a proposal. And as I said, we're going to be working with Public Works further on it, making sure that it is satisfactory for everyone's needs. It obviously has to work aesthetically. It also has to work practically. So we're kind of all evaluating that proposal right now. That was his best recommendation to deal with some of the issues about the hardiness and drought tolerance. But yeah, it's a good point about the leaves, and we definitely will.
And will that proposal be coming back to the Arts Commission for approval?
It won't be coming back to the Arts Commission for approval, but it will be reviewed at the staff level, and we can share it with the commission.
So just to be clear, you're asking us to fund a piece of art that we don't get to approve?
Fund improvements to and renovation to the project, yes.
And I don't see anything in the budget for the artist work. Are we expecting him to do this all pro bono?
We have so far. He hasn't asked for anything more than that.
Maybe that would be under contingency. On this line item where it says construction management
Right.
and contingency.
Yeah.
I think any other questions before we start with comments, including myself? Yeah,
Chair, do you want to open this to public comment? Thank you.
thank you. We're so excited about this topic. Keep skipping. At this point, are there any public comments that we can take in?
Staff will note for the record that you did receive a written public comment in support of this project. That's in your addendum that's at the dais. But beyond that, there are no other public comments. Thank you.
Should we read that into the record?
It's already been submitted to the record. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, then I'll open up the floor to comments by my fellow commissioners.
First of all, I want to thank Public Works for all their support of maintaining this project over the years. I know I walk by there several times a week, and I see what they've had to do over the years, and it is sad to see that it is in such disrepair. And I've actually had friends comment to me about how sad it's looking. So I see there is a need to do something there. I really have a hard time, given the fact that we just got our first rain in God knows how long, thinking of planting 80 trees. It just seems so irresponsible. And I understand that, yes, this was the way it was designed way back when, but we're in a different place. And I really cannot approve that budget for planting trees that require water. I just think it's just so short-sighted. And I really think we need to go back to the artist and have him, whether it's native grasses or something that doesn't require as much water and with leaves that don't fall off. I could get my arms around approving the infrastructure part of this budget, but I really am not comfortable approving anything to do with the landscaping, especially not seeing a design first. I think that's asking us to we don't know what it's going to look like, and you're asking us to approve funding for it without seeing a design. So for multiple reasons, the drought and not knowing what it's going to look like, I really can't approve that part of the budget.
Well, tagging on to what you're saying, I was just thinking about that being that it is in great part a living artwork, that those kinds of changes could be made because life has its changes and things do change in the environment. So I can support that part. As far as the rest of it, I think that in the spirit of cooperation and work with Public Works, that it is important that we undertake this as conceptually, and unfortunately, it's a lot of money, but I think that we have to do it. But I do support Commissioner Cowdery's comments about the landscaping and feel that changes can be made in the spirit of the environment. And I would think that the artist would go along with that effort to do his share in helping to maintain it in a reasonable way. So thank you for bringing that up.
Commissioner Meredith?
Well, I'm totally in support of the funding to renovate the plaza. I think it's an important part of the cultural identity of the community. In terms of the trees, Public Works or the city, we're all going to be paying for the water for those trees, and I think Public Works is dedicated to coming up with species that aren't going to take a lot of water. If they're comfortable with the recommendations of the artist in terms of long-term maintenance and water, then I think they know a lot more about it than lay people. They deal with it every day. So again, I'm just totally in support of the proposal.
I agree with my fellow commissioners and their comments, and I thank you for those. I especially think that the trees, substituting the trees that this artist selected for different trees, changes the whole artwork. And it reminds me of a book I read a long time ago, and I was just pulling it up here. It's called The $12 Million Stuffed Shark, which was a live shark that was fished from the ocean and put on a gallery with plexiglass outside of it. And then it deteriorated. And then the question is that if you replace it with a new shark, is it the same piece? And so there is that to contend with. And reading through this and having gone through that, through the Memorial Plaza, it is looking very sad, and definitely we need to have that fixed. We make the necessary upgrades. And I sort of feel like we have to go ahead, and this was part of an arts project to begin with, which in my opinion was, in hindsight, was the wrong approach, because this is a memorial plaza, not an arts plaza. However, and then there's this whole other side of this, which is, in fact, the artist in his own website says that the sculpture, there's a marriage between landscaping and art. And the art, he says, are the columns. So, and the columns are not being renovated. So I feel like this is not, or should not be, our cost. But what I'm hearing you guys say is that that ship has sailed. And this is where we are, and we just need to fix this problem. But it is concerning that we're going to be spending a whole lot of money on trees that change the art that was originated by this artist. And it's no longer that piece. And it's outrageous that we'd be putting more trees here. Unless it's a native tree, I guess I would support that. But I just have issues with the whole idea that this is no longer art or no longer that art piece. Organically, it should just, if the trees are meant to die, then let it die. I really firmly believe that we should allow the art plaza to be constituted in the landscaping and the hardscaping part of it. But we shouldn't replant trees. If organically that art element of the whole Veterans Plaza took a natural turn, which is they're going to die, so let them die. That's art. So those are my comments.
Are we able to make a motion just to approve the hardscape part and not the landscaping part?
As staff has noted, the entire project is all-encompassing, which is the landscaping as well as the hardscaping materials. The recommendation from staff was that it be in toto. So that would be what staff is seeking. If that's not something that's supported, we could see where else the commission wants to take this, but that's staff's recommendation.
Is it possible that we, and I know he's put in probably a whole bunch of time into this project, pro bono, as we're told, but can we talk to him so that we can address this issue of like radically changing the art that he created? He chose the trees, he chose how many trees would go there, the type, the species, and now he's essentially going to be doing a new art piece. So can we talk to him about those issues? I mean, with that, like, just to help us get through this, but I
guess what's the answer that staff that you'd be seeking? Because I heard it stated earlier that there'd be support for native trees, and I also heard that any change from the original plan would not be supported. So if I were to bring the artist here, and he were to hear the statement saying, please put in native trees, but don't change what you had there before, I think that would be a frustration on the part of the artist. So help staff understand what you'd be seeking, and we'd be happy to accommodate as best we can, but I'm not sure what the goal is by bringing the artist to talk about the trees, because I'm hearing some conflicting direction.
Thank you for organizing those thoughts, and it is conflicting because it's because of what I said earlier. On one hand, I don't even think we should touch the art piece. On the other hand, if we must have trees there, then at least have native vegetation. But perhaps it doesn't matter one way or the other whether this artist comes before us, because the landscaping, the hardscape, it needs renovation. And whether I sit here and argue over and over again that this is part of it's a public space that needs to be maintained and not with art funds, I guess, I take your opinion that that ship has sailed. So it's just this confusing place where we are now spending this kind of money to do this. And I guess speaking out loud, I would say, my first inclination is to not touch the trees, but to fix the hardscape that needs fixing. Yeah. That would be my inclination.
I have a question for staff. I assume the city has an arborist, and the city has standards for drought-resistant landscaping, and so all those things are going to be playing in to what's ultimately approved for the landscaping. And the arborist is going to have a strong opinion about what types of trees are best for that site, for the environment, low water, So I,
Right. Between, thank you for the question, between Arts and Recreation staff, between Public Works, which includes the arborist and the artist, there have been conversations about exploring species of trees, determining what best suits that site, consistent with the artist's original vision. And I will acknowledge two things. One, this is tricky because it's both art that is not changing, right, the columns and the fountain, as well as art that is changing, which is the trees. And so it's complicated for us to manage this, and when it was envisioned 17 years ago, it probably wasn't expected that we'd be in this situation. One. Two, this is a lot of money, and we are all careful about protecting the public art fund that has built up over a number of years, and for us to spend a lot of money on this, that's significant. So we respect that, and we take that seriously too. So I understand why this is difficult for you. At the same time, when we look at the comment we received from the public and then comments that I received from commissioners as well, this is a site that needs to be improved, right? There's no doubt about that. You look at the pictures, you just walk out there, we have to address it somehow. So I guess what I'm saying is staff's looking for some direction that we can move forward, because I would hate to leave this meeting without being able to at least address something. So staff's original recommendation was the entire project. So we'd be seeking a motion on that. If that isn't carried or moved, then we'll be happy to go in a different direction.
I think that we have to move forward on it. I think that I think that the city is within their purview to work with the city arborist and explain to the arborist, explain to the artist what that arborist recommends and ask for the okay from the artist rather than the other way around. And I think that things change. Some artists have great control over their art. Other artists, once the art is in, they aren't so concerned about it. You know, when the Fletcher Benton piece was painted a couple different colors, he didn't care. He was busy on to other things. And so I don't know what the contract was with this artist for it, but there's no doubt that we have to do something. We've never been asked to do this before. A lot of money does go to keep public art working. For example, when the suds have to be washed out of the fountainhead, and if we had to go back and redo the fiberglass on Fountainhead, that's another issue. But this is the first time. I don't think that it will arise again on any artworks, or of course, we're only talking about the city-owned ones, and I think that in the spirit of a city working together, that it's important that we do our share. It's a big lump. It's really a big lump, but now isn't a bad time to be doing that. So that's my thought.
So if we were going to make that motion, could we include a stipulation that the number of trees be reduced and that it really is a direction of drought tolerant and considering the environment we're in?
Steve, would the artist be open to that, do you think? I don't know if you asked that question specifically or not.
Well, so he's agreed to do some reduction. I think there would be pushback on it just because that he's talking about the effect trees have. So they're in a way used as a sculptural element, right? The effect that they have of the massing. What we can definitely do is to go back and say, these are concerns that we may not have really underlined with you about drought and the leaf clutter, particularly now that we're really sensitive to, and to rethink that and see if there's any other option. So we could do that.
Now, it's probably here, and I apologize, but is there a timeline for doing this work, or do we know when we would do this work?
Well, if the commission approved the funds, we would go to council, and we'd do that as soon as we could, which would be some weeks away, a few weeks. As soon as they did, we would start the work because it's been deferred so long, and to try to get it in, and it's already a bit later in the year, I guess, than we would have liked to. But So
But is
this
there any
winter,
urgency to
this
do
fall,
it
winter. There-
like now?
The urgency is that it is a deteriorating and it's an eyesore, and the fountain basin's getting worse. So that's, yeah, it's kind of like patching a pothole, it needs to be done.
I'm only asking that for the purpose of learning more about what the artist has in mind with regard to the trees, and how many trees are going to go there, if we're going to put the trees down, and even perhaps the artist will reconsider replacing the trees, because that would, radically change his art piece. Can we pause and ask those questions, knowing that we have to approve it to fix the pool and the algae and all that?
Well, I don't think we can go backwards in terms of saying we aren't going to change those trees, because many have died, others are dying, and they are prone to the blight, pest blight. So it's a losing proposition to do that, and we certainly don't want to replace them with the same kind. What we did do was explore, for a while we explored alternate types of birch, but as commissioners have noted, that's not a native tree. And that there was a dialogue with the arborist. Arborist has been quite involved, actually, because before we engaged the artist, we were trying to just reproduce the appearance as closely as possible, and then to go to him and say, this is what we're going to be doing, is it's just going to maintain the look. We've really kind of moved past that. And for many kind of the considerations that you've actually brought up about the drought issues. But what might be beneficial is to, bring his rationale to you, if you approve this, and to bring him into a conversation so that you can just be more clear on what it is he's doing.
I think Glennis's point before, which is, we're asked to pay for this, essentially, it's a brand-new piece of art, and we should be making the decision of what it is that is going to go there. So until we know exactly how many trees, what type of trees, if any trees, then I think that we'd be remiss in just saying, here, take the funds and do whatever you want with it.
Is there a way, and I'm going to ask staff, I'll ask the commission too, is there a way for us to approve this project, if the commission approves it as a whole, and then give staff the flexibility to at least move forward with the hardscape, the actual infrastructure that needs to be improved, and then give staff the authority or delegate that to, we have to go through the city council to approve the funding, right? That is, so just because the commission approves it today, we still have to go to the council for approving the funding. Assuming they do that, we then begin work with the artist to try to identify, with input from the commission, reduce number of trees, drought tolerance, native if possible, and then identify if we can make that work. If we can't, perhaps we tell the artist that this is going to be remaining as it is, and just let the trees kind of wither, so that we can at least identify. I'm trying to find a way to support what I'm hearing, at least 3 of you say, and keep moving the project forward, and I'll come back to you again to say, okay, let me approve the trees, because then I could see 5 people at that time saying, I don't like this tree, I like that tree, and then we're right back to where we were. So perhaps that's one way to kind of compromise here and find a way to keep this project moving forward as a whole, give staff the authority to work with the artist within the criteria that you establish for us, and we'll see if we can make that work. And again, if we can't, we're under no obligation, and tell me if this is wrong, Steve. If the trees die, are we obligated to replace them consistent with what we agreed to 17 years ago? Or they've died and we haven't brought back 90 trees, right? There's, there are 80 and now there's 70, however many now. Yeah, so maybe that's part of the deal with him. I don't know.
Yeah.
So I'm just trying to, and that's a question for Steve first. That was a question for Steve first, and then I'll come back to him, sorry.
So I think that's a creative solution. I think what I'm hearing is the ability, with your recommendation to go forward to at least get the funding approved, because that's a big piece of it, and it needs to happen, and then to begin the work. It could be that we can also, I don't know, we'd have to talk to Public Works. We might be able to stagger the phases so that we could start to work on the hardscape while we're still talking about the tree work. So I'd have to find out that. But I think that would be a good way to be able to move forward. Otherwise, it just sort of stops and then has to get reviewed again as a whole piece. What I think also we need to do is to review the contract, because I assumed that that was a standard public art contract, which would have said that the city is responsible to maintain the piece in its original appearance or close to it, and when any changes are happened, to consult with the artist, if the artist is still alive. So that's kind of, that underpins a lot of what I've said in my presentation, and did not necessarily say explicitly, but to that end, this is an unusual project because it is a living piece, and sometimes things go away. And I've had experience like this where projects, it don't have to be somewhat rethought in terms of the materials. You know, sometimes pieces are even not living pieces, but they're refabricated with slightly different materials for the same impact. So that's where we're trying to get to. I think we've found that an element of this, like a component, which is the trees, is not working now. I mean, this has been 17 years, so they've worked for a long time, but conditions have changed. Environmental conditions have changed. So as it is a living piece, maybe our process is somewhat living too, and we can, you know, move forward with approval of funding, and you could say it as, you know, this is an up to amount, and we hope that we'll recoup some of it. It may not take as much money as that. This is what we got lined out, and we'll get more specifics. Incidentally, the trees and grasses are actually a fairly small portion of the budget. And that will give us the ability to review when we actually have a design, a visual design, which we can also share with you, and examples of the trees. So we really understand what the artist is trying to accomplish when he makes a change in the appearance. I take issue with the suggestion that it's a completely different project, but I definitely would respect that it is an altered project, and I think our question is, does it still work? Will it still work with a different kind of tree? And I think that's something we would have to decide together and would be talking with artists about.
Did you put that into a motion?
Just rewind and somebody.
Before we get a motion, I just want to say again that I really think it's important to be, and I don't know if it's you, Steve, doing this, but who's ever working with the artist has to be super clear that we're fine with the fact it's not going to look exactly the same, because we don't want as many trees. I think part of the beauty of it is the birch bark, which is going to be tough to find in another tree, I think. But I think that, as I suggested in an email, I think we really need to get someone that's good at Photoshop and see what it looks like with no trees and see what it looks like with 10 trees. And not allow the artist to be married to his original concept, because the environment has changed too dramatically to do that.
And find out if the artist would be okay in allowing it to stay as is, because that is the art piece he created. And make a motion to recommend that City Council approve up to an allocation of $230,000 from the Public Art Fund to support the renovation. I'm going to re-say that, to support the repair of the Veterans Memorial Plaza. And that the artist will, that the commission, the Arts Commission will have a chance before any vegetation is replaced in that Veterans Plaza, that the commission has a chance to see what it is that's going to go there and approve that next step. Does that motion need editing?
Well, I guess the seeing and approving, it's somewhat redundant. You wouldn't be approving without seeing it, but you're suggesting that the artist be the one who makes suggested changes to the landscape and have that proposal come to you, not staff from either Arts and Rec or Public Works be the one who proposed the trees, for example?
Yeah, the artist needs to tell us, one, if he's okay with leaving the trees as they are to organically do what trees will do naturally and not touch those. And the artist, depending on the answer to that, then we want to know how many trees do we need to have to replace the current ones, and what is the species that can be placed there that both would be agreeable to this artist and also agreeable with the current circumstances in the environment. So how many trees would that be? So 2 questions. Is it viable for this artist to just allow his piece to organically do what it will? And if not, what is the replacement?
Okay, I'm not sure exactly how staff would be able to manage the second part of that. I didn't hear anything that would be giving us direction other than what is the replacement and how many trees. Those are questions, they're not direction. So if to your question about does this need editing, staff would need editing because that doesn't give us direction.
Okay.
I also think, just to add on to that, and I know we can't get the answer tonight, but I really wish we did have the answer about what the contract says, because that's critical. If we're not required to maintain it, we might be doing something completely different. And I really think that's a missing piece of information that we need. Once again, I think maybe, I know you want us to approve it all, but I think we should just approve the hardscape part and get an answer to what is required by the city in terms of the trees.
Yeah, go ahead.
Can we approve the budget, but with the provision that the selection and placement and decision on the kinds of trees be handled through the Public Works arborist, and that the arborist would recommend how much to replace and how to do it, rather than, and would refer that to the artist rather than the other way around. In other words, that we depend on the arborist to make the right decisions as to how many and the number to get the effect of grouping and mass without picking the wrong kinds of trees. That's not part of my motion, but that we do a motion that approves the project, but with the proviso that the situation of trees, the number and the placement be a separate consideration.
We could just
Would it-
approve less money for trees, and then we get fewer trees.
Yeah, that's what I was doing the math on that. So if we do 35 plus 25, which is replacement trees and replacement grasses, if we hold off on those, and plus the 15,000 contributed by Public Works, which comes up to 75,000. So 75 deducted from the 230 is 155. So can we approve a budget of 155 for the pump improvement, pool basing, resurfacing, and construction management? And then on another date, have this brought up after we address the questions we've all had here?
May I comment?
Yes,
Kevin?
please.
So what I would rather see you do is approve the budget as an up to for renovation of the plaza with landscaping and hardscape. But if you feel it's necessary to reserve final review of the proposed landscape changes, because I hate to keep harping on this. This is a piece of art. It's a whole piece of art. And it's kind of like saying, why don't we just replace a couple of wind fins on one of the sculptures because I don't like the color of those and we're going to change, you know, it needs to be thought of as that way. Otherwise, what you're doing is redesigning a piece of art. That's the artist's work. And it's the artist's job to propose the changes to a piece of art that he created to achieve the same intent and effect. In this case, the arborist's work and the Public Works Department are key in that they have to maintain it. So the dialogue with the arborist is important, though I wouldn't say that the arborist should be in first position to choose the tree and have the artist respond to it. But it's important to remember this is a landscape architect. He's a very experienced, more experienced than he is in fact now than when he created it, when
Sure.
he did, so he knows even more about that. So that's where I'm uncomfortable because I feel, and I do have to say, whether it's in the contract or not, he's protected by federal and state law that we are not going to be altering work that he hasn't consented to. So the idea that we would say, well, the trees can be separated from the hardscape, can be separated from the granite sculptures. If you think about it in a holistic way, you wouldn't do that with another piece of art. And I know it is an unusual case.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of a test case. I think it's like it was our first big project, I think. It was right around the time that the ordinance was passed. So it was gloriously ambitious. We would do different now. We probably wouldn't do a piece that has landscaping, but it's also magnificent work. So anyway, I'm a little bit rambly, but I'm just trying to say I think if we look at it that way, I would say I wouldn't encourage trying to parcel it out and to approve just certain pieces, because in what way does it improve, what way does it work to have a water element that works and dying trees and eventually no trees?
That's his art piece, is what he's created, and I don't think that we would want to call it a renovation. It should be a repair more, so that's more like the word. And I think that we can't make this decision, frankly, until we have the contract and we know exactly what we need to do. And then maybe we're putting the horse before the cart before the horse. And so that's why I asked earlier, can we wait a little bit? Is there any urgency to this? Is there a way to wait to find out some of these questions?
It sounds like we can approve the whole budget, but make the landscape contingent on our approval, the design on our final approval.
Steve, is that what you were suggesting?
Yes.
Okay. We can do that. I think the longer you wait, the more this becomes both an eyesore and a safety hazard. You know, as people walk through there, and there's, you know, it's a trip and fall issue too. So as soon as we can, I would encourage the commission to take action on this so we can move forward to address at least the hardscape challenges that we face right now. And there'll be more and more every day as more people notice that. So I appreciate the recommendation from Steve, and we're staff be happy to accept a motion to that effect.
I just want to say one thing in regard to what Steve was saying. You're right, it's true, it's an art piece, but this art piece has already changed in that the birch trees have failed. So it will never be exactly what it was. And you wouldn't put a failed type of cement on a piece again, just so you wouldn't put a failed type of tree in again. So, you know, you have to go to a new drawing board for landscape, and you know, you take it from there. You take it from there. So, and he has to be flexible on this too, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
So I'd like to attempt to make a motion, if that's okay,
Yes, please.
Chair. All right, I'd like to move approval of the $230,000 from the Public Art Fund, breaks my heart, with the contingency that before any new landscaping is completed, the landscape design comes to the Arts Commission for final approval. And that it should be based on all the recommendations we've made this evening in terms of fewer trees, maybe something that doesn't lose its leaves, drought tolerant, native. I think that was the list.
So just so staff's clear before you seek a second, Chair, if the landscape plan doesn't have all of those elements, are you saying that wouldn't be considered by the commission, or you're saying within these parameters, staff, please work to bring as close as you can to meeting these goals? Okay, thank you.
I'll second that.
Do you want to take any additional comments, or are you ready to
Yeah.
call the,
We're ready
roll.
for roll take.
sorry, Chair Cowdery? I'm sorry, Commissioner Cowdery.
Yes.
Jane, were you second? Commissioner Emanuel?
Yes.
Okay, thank you, sorry. Commissioner Meredith
Yes.
and Chair Klauber.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes 4-0.
Thank you.
Does the commission need a little break, or are you ready to power through for the last few items?
Let's power through.
We're ready.
How are you doing, Steve?
I'm doing great, thank you. Hope you're all doing well.
So the next item is the Public Art Projects Report.
Thank you, Chair. Update on a few projects. The Heritage Plaza project on Locust. Installation of Jen Lewin's project is in progress right now. The contractors have put in the bases of the, contractors have put in the basic base of the pedestrian paseo on the north side of the building. And the artists team has installed 15 subgrade basins, which will house the lighted platform public art elements. This happened over the last couple of weeks. All the rain we just got set them back a little, not a lot though, and we expect the remaining sections of the platforms to go in the next week or two. Anybody can walk by at this point and view the progress of the construction in the paseo. And I went by and counted them myself today. So I was really happy to see in the path that goes from the sidewalk all the way to the back of the property, there are 15 and they're spread way out, so there's a lot there. And the first one that's just off the sidewalk is pushed out a little bit further and it's separated a bit. And that's kind of like the trigger element when you stand on and it starts to light it up. So it's great to see it happening. It's really different. It's going to be something we don't have. It's very exciting. And we helped the developer select that artist. That was a great relationship. And we thank you for approving that process. I mentioned earlier the Lesher Courtyard murals, and our panel met last week on October 21. This was the panel that you appointed in July with Councilmember Heskew again, community member Natalie Inouye representing DRAA, artist Monica Canilau, who was one of the artists who did our Assembly Hall, and gallery owner curator Yarrow Slaps. Our art commission representative was Commissioner Meredith, who stepped in on short notice after Commissioner Bruner resigned, and we really appreciate it. The panel reviewed a short list of 16 artists that was culled from our program's pre-qualified muralist pool. They selected one artist as their top choice and 4 alternates. Staff has reached out to the number 1 choice regarding the commission. We will return to you with that artist, the top ranked available artist, along with a concept proposal. So when we come, we want to have the concept, and then you would approve the artist and concept. This may be at a special meeting of the commission, which we would call, and we would do that just to expedite the project, but of course, that would be with your approval. So we're very excited. I can't tell you who the artists are yet, but very strong artist. To talk about one of the rebound murals, I think I mentioned this, I may have mentioned this in a written report, but the masked revival piece that was at Mel's, we took that down so the owners could begin renovation of the building. If you've seen it, they mostly are doing interior reno at the moment, but they are going to be doing the huge mural by Burke Wallace that you approved for the new Hot Boys restaurant. So, but we came up with a great solution. I really want to credit Emily and Eric and Kat Reisinger, who's one of our rec managers. She's the manager at Senior Center and Assembly Hall. They've got a solution where we're going to get it to go on the outer wall of the Assembly Hall on the other side, south side, and create a little seating area so people can hang out and enjoy the space. So it's a very good second life for that piece of art. This will take us a little time in the making because we're hiring an outside contractor to handle that. It's a little more delicate than just having it done by in-house. So it's safely in storage now. And that's probably great because it missed the rain. So it's all good. A little bit more, though, on rebound. Sometime in the next year, the council is going to deliberate on all aspects of rebound and whether some of them might continue, and including the other murals. So they will be approving whether those murals be permanent. So they're just going to be up for now, which is great. So they're just out there, and they'll stay up until there's a review of rebound at the council. Staff will also be present in case there are questions about the murals. And that's my report.
Thank you very much. Have any questions for Steve?
I have a question just to understand what you just said about the rebound murals. So the city council could decide whether to keep them or not to keep them. If they decide to keep them, then do we move them, do we approve them as part of the collection so that they are protected under the public art policy and plan?
Yeah, this is still a work in progress. So I anticipate that the discussion of rebound and downtown next will be coming to council early next year. At that point, they will be considering not what to do with the murals, but what direction they want to take them. If they want to send them back here for your consideration, which was our original plan, or if they just want to say they're good and bypass the commission just to expedite things. We don't know yet, but we will update you as soon as we do know. But we're excited that there's interest. I mean, at least for the time being, they will stay, which is great. And then staff will be continue to advocate for them to continue, and whatever process that takes, we will let you know. If it's coming back to you, that's awesome. If not, it'll just be through council, but we hear you.
I have a question regarding marketing of the murals, and what is there a strategy behind the city's advertising and marketing these murals so that we can push for more of this business public relationship that we want, and to have people acknowledge and see the murals more? What marketing efforts have been done?
Are you specifically to the rebound or to all our murals?
I am I'm asking about all our murals.
Okay, thanks. Well, so we do include them on our website in our public art collection information. We have added them and are adding them to our public art much. And we had, when we do commission new pieces, we usually do press on those too, press releases on those as they come out. I don't think we did on the rebound because we were really assisting city administrator, city manager's office with that effort. So, but yeah, I think that was promoted as part of all the rebound efforts. So those are things we typically do for the murals.
Is the city's like marketing department, is anyone like in owning the murals for the idea, for doing public relations about the murals and the possibilities around it? Is there any sort of resource like that we could use to bring it out? I asked because I mentioned the murals to some neighbors of mine, and they had no idea what I was talking about. So what additional marketing can we do for the murals to go to be seen, for the community to have knowledge that they're out there, that we went through this whole effort and expense to put them up there, and that we want more of them? What can be done?
I'd like to answer that just a little bit. The Bedford staff disseminates a lot of information on this in a variety of ways, and it's picked up by magazines and visitor groups and this sort of thing, and so that's going out all the time. The city websites and such, there's a lot of ways to publicize all the murals. And when we do the walking tours, we always ask people how they found out about it, and it's really a pretty broad variety now. In fact, we're getting like 3 times as many people coming on the walking tours, which is the best way to see the murals. So it is working. Obviously, it's not going to hit every neighborhood, and you're going to have to walk around your neighborhood and let them know, go out for trick or treat. But there really is a lot going on, and a lot of increased activity in that regard. So we are seeing increased numbers of people seeing it and knowing it. And the downtown, Walnut Creek downtown does a tremendous job advertising all the stuff we're doing too. So I thank them.
Chair Claver, I just thought you might be interested in something I'd heard. So the artist of the piece that I mentioned before that was at Mel's, we took that down, and it came down a little bit faster than I expected, so I hadn't a chance to alert the artist. And he, within days, contacted me, said, people are going out to look for it, where is it? Because he has a following. So that was exciting to know, and I was glad that I actually had an answer for him, that it's going back up somewhere. He was afraid it was gone. So there are different audiences, I think, and sometimes it is audiences that follow a specific artist too will come out. And actually, that's a great thing because it brings in people who wouldn't necessarily just walk up past it when they live here.
Yeah. Right, that's why I ask, is to get more people to come to Walnut Creek and, go to our restaurants, buy from our retail shops, and have art become more of a destination, an idea for a trip, because there's art there, there's art here. So the more marketing, the better. So thank you. Are there any additional questions regarding these?
I have one more question. Can you give us a quick update on what's going on with the Tice Valley project?
Tice Valley, yeah. We've talked about it as a possible 2022 project. We do not have the funds, there are no remaining funds for the Recycle Smart. So we aren't able to do it that way. We would have to do it as a project that would be wholly funded by the public art program. So though I don't have on a specific timeline, our thought was to come back to the commission and ask if you want to proceed with that project out of public art budget. And we can bring that to you in the new year. Yeah. Okay.
Anyone else? Commissioner Meredith, anything? Okay, thanks. Okay,
Thank you.
thank you, Steve. I guess next are staff's announcements and brief reports on activities. Who wants to go first?
I will go. Emily Enders here, Bedford Curator. I think you all received an invitation, but the Bedford is opening If a Tree Falls, Art of the Boundary Oak on Saturday, this coming Saturday from 3 to 5. If you remember, the Boundary Oak tree is the City of Walnut Creek's logo, and it was out at Boundary Oak Golf Course, and it blew down in a windstorm in 2019, and then COVID happened. And so in November of last year, we had a huge pickup event for all of the artists who were interested in making work out of the tree, and they've had a year to make work. They dropped it off the gallery, and now we're currently installing that show. So all community-based, everyone who made artwork is able to participate. So it'll be a wonderful chance for us to celebrate not only Walnut Creek, but the artists who live in the area. So I would love to see each of you there.
Thank you, Emily.
Looks like Miley wants to make a report virtually. Here she comes.
Good evening, Commissioners. This is Milo Gaswara-Garcia, Program Manager with Center for Community Arts. I just wanted to share that we're excited to welcome back our annual handcrafted holiday sale on Saturday and Sunday, December 4th and 5th at Shadelands Art Center. And the art sale event will include handcrafted artwork from over 40 of our community arts teaching artists and students. And a portion of the sales will benefit Center for Community Arts, the Clay Arts Guild, and also the Community Arts Foundation in support of scholarships. So if anyone is interested in more information, you can head to our website and click on events. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Miley, for hanging in there that whole meeting. A couple things from me. I already shared with those of you, but just to make the announcement public, Vice Chair Bruner has resigned his seat on the commission because he's moving out of the area. We wish him the best. He did a great job. This was his second term as commissioner, and we will miss him. So the plan to replace that seat is that we are going to have the four of you for the remainder of this year into January. The city will be recruiting in January to fill that seat, as well as another vacancy coming up and other vacancies in other commissions. This is part of the regular recruitment process. So we will likely see 2 new commissioners come your April meeting. So we can look forward to that change for this body. So stay tuned for that. If you know of anyone who has interest in being on the commission, please encourage them. This seat can be filled. Actually, both seats can be filled by non-residents. There are 2 slots available for the Arts Commission to be non-residents, and we currently don't have any non-residents on the commission, correct? So there's an opportunity, especially if they have experience or interest in public art. That would be ideal. So that's my first update for you, and I think you all know this. Scott Dennison's not on the call right now. Scott is going to be retiring in January, so that's another big change for us. We will be happy to share with you plans to wish him a great send-off. I think those are still in the works, but stay tuned on that. And then the interim plan for the department is for Carolyn Jackson, who you all know, to step in as the interim general manager of the center effective in January. So I'm excited for Carolyn to build on all the great work that Scott has done over the past 30, 40, 50 years here in Walnut Creek. I will be happy to share with you plans for his send-off when I know more about them. So that's my report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. We can now move to commissioners' announcements and brief reports on activities. Who would like to go? Commissioner Emmanuel, please.
Well, one of the great rebound things that took place this summer was Arts Around August, and Glynis was very involved in the steering committee for that too. But I just wanted to mention a really fun thing was the movable feast, and that Carol Fowler and I participated in that by leading the guests from one restaurant to the other via art pieces and talking about it. And these were people who had never, most of them had never been on an art walk before and knew very little about our art and public art, and were in the younger range. So it was just a great opportunity to spread what we do, and it was a lot of fun. So there seems to be a lot of interest in continuing it and making it an annual event, and I'd love to just be part of it again. It was really cool. So.
Even with the smoke and the heat.
Huh?
Even with the smoke and the heat.
Commissioner Meredith, I meant to say your name earlier.
It's okay.
Amen.
Just a report on the Design Review Commission. They've had a lot of canceled meetings, but since we last met, they're looking at 2 projects that have a public art requirement. There's an 8-unit townhome project on Walden Road, and then there's 13 single-family homes on Walnut Boulevard, and both of the projects are proposing to do in lieu fees, so that will add to the fund.
In lieu.
They're in just for preliminary review, so it's a ways off, but still.
I actually watched those meetings, and Design Review decided not to recommend either one of them to the Planning Commission, so it'll be interesting to see if they go straight to the Planning Commission or revise. So it's an interesting meeting. I just have a brief announcement. As part of Arts Around August, I worked with Karen Majors from the Historical Society Board, and we developed 4 different scavenger hunt bingo cards that were available during the month of August. And the Bedford Gallery has kindly agreed to house them on their website moving forward so that they'll still be available to the public. Because I think it'd be a nice way for more people to get downtown, learn about the art and the history that is here. Great activity for a scouting troop or a birthday party or a book club, whatever. So we're working on getting that done.
Thank you. There's one more announcement by Kevin Safi.
Yeah, sorry, and I know you have one more announcement too, Chair, but I want to publicly thank our other staff here that have sat through this long meeting very patiently and got the meeting in order. That's Amy Hevener from the City Clerk's office and Orlando Griffin from my office. So thank you both for doing great work to get this going. And thank you, commissioners, for also hanging in there. This was a long meeting and productive meeting, and you did really good work. So thank you. Chair, you have one more thing.
I really just wanted to thank Emily and Steve and Eric if he were here, but you guys did a tremendous job in putting together the selection panel for the Rodney Plaza and running a very professional show. We were very prepared, and we relied on you for the complexities that came about, and you handled it so smoothly, and I think everybody was pleased, and we ended up with an amazing artist, which is great, and we wouldn't have been there without your tireless efforts, and even going to work on Sundays during, it was just a lot of work. Thank you. The other announcement that I have is, since Fritz Brunner has left, and the Simpson family Courtyard liaison will be going to Ann Meredith. And I think that has already been agreed by you, Ann, so no surprises, right? Also, no surprise here that Fritz was the Community Arts Foundation liaison, and Glennis has agreed to take that role. So thank you for that. And with that, we are adjourned.
Thank
Cool.
you.
Thank you so much for your help. I don't know what I would do.
Complicated.
That was complicated.